Hello, everyone. So just before we get into this episode, I need to confess that I messed up on the sound for the first 8 minutes. So the microphone that I was supposed to be speaking into wasn't on, but Ray's was. So hers will be really loud. I'll be kind of echoey, but I noticed it after 8 minutes and we fix it and we actually record together. So be prepared for that. I set the bar low and I'm hoping that those set expectations are going to help you. But in all seriousness, today's episode was quite cool. It's around stress. It's around not burnout, because we don't speak about burnout, but it's about recognizing how foolish we can be as humans sometimes. But when I say foolish, I'm actually meaning how resilient and unaware we can be to what's coming around the corner, as well as if you're in the moment and you're really struggling with something, but you're putting in the effort. How do you know to keep going? Like what's that thing that's inside you that you can lean on, that gives you a bit of faith and a bit of hope that actually, if I keep going, it's going to change? Because I think that's where sometimes it gets a bit hard. So take a listen to today. If you're really struggling with your 2025 goals already and the motivation's low, or you're just not feeling the progress, today's what you're going to need to hear. Enjoy.
Welcome back. Yes, I said yes, you'll see why, because, well, you can see why, because Ray's right next to me. Welcome back to that interview and podcast with
your host.
Go and say your name.
Ray
and Dom. So I soloed it last week, and I'm glad to have you back. Welcome back.
Thank you.
How have you been?
Good. I feel like I'm really getting on top of life.
Nice. What's the latest? Like, I haven't seen you for a week. What with our audience?
Our audience.
No, me either.
Why did I miss last week? It was because I think I was out. I was out doing belly dancing. My friends roped me into belly dancing, which was an interesting experience. And apparently we are doing another few months of it and then doing some choreographed routine at one of our friends' 40th birthday parties, which should be rather interesting. We'll see. We will see. And tonight, every third week of the month, there's we skip belly dancing. So this is why I'm here.
I'm really sorry.
But that doesn't mean I'm going to miss future podcast episodes, because you're going to adapt your recording schedule to make sure you can fit me in.
I'm really sorry that you have to miss belly dancing tonight. That is.
No, there isn't any. I'm absolutely gutted. But yeah, other than that, in my main business, I had a new starter in November on the team and another one in January. So starting to see the positive impact of actually having more resources on the Route to Growth accounting team. So it means that we actually have time to properly fix, things that have been chugging along in the background.
Quickly, let's just go down that pathway quickly. Is, for me, on the outside, it's been a really cool experiment, because you've been using the psychometrics that we use, that I use, and I've always said it allows you to really tap into someone's potential, see them, and actually have a bit of faith that they will rise to the occasion.
Yes, and one of our new starters has been like that. And on the flip side, I basically have used Don's profiling now. Like, there's a very definitive profile that's needed for certain roles within an accounting practice. And I use that profile now as part of my recruitment. So basically, I don't know if this is evil or not. It feels evil, but basically when I'm looking at a whole bunch of applicants for a position, once I found them, like filed it down to like my favorite 4, maybe I've done an initial interview, I send them all the R3 assessment. They know that they're getting a personality profiling assessment, and they possibly answer in such a way that a bit different because they know it's for a role. I don't know. But I then use that as I have sent some other assessments that I do on like technical skills, but I use that to help identify the right candidates for the role. And it's made a huge impact on the recruitment process, and I would say the success of my recruitment process.
Yeah, and I want to address your, you said there is this evil, and I think it's completely the opposite, because I think the biggest failing that I see us all doing from a personal perspective,
and when you go to corporates and see
corporate, is putting ourselves in the wrong seat. You put the wrong people in the wrong seat.
Yeah,
you are just making sure you put the right person in the right seat. What does that mean? It means, imagine starting up a new role, and wanting so badly to do well at it that you'll do anything, even if it feels hard to do.
Hard, like, as it goes against your natural, like, energy
Yeah.
feeding
Putting
type of work.
into this type of work, right?
Mm.
And you just think, this is part of the job. This is what I'm going to do. And you have to know, I'm going to do that every single day. Month 3, you're fine. Month 4, you're fine. Month 6, you're okay. Month 7, now it starts to get a bit much. And then it starts to drain your energy.
And then you have to look for employment elsewhere.
No, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
Because humans are very resilient. So then what you start to do, you say, it's just whatever it is. And I'm going to go home now and get refreshed. But when you go home, you're coming home drained. And it starts to have this waterfall effect on everywhere. So eventually, a year or 2 years later, you're ending up stressed. You're not really getting along with things at home, and you don't really know the answer because you're getting paid a salary and you're doing a job. And so you therefore should be grateful. And the human resilience is where I think, from a leadership perspective, from where I look at it, is like, we have to understand people to put them in the right seat so that they are having a positive impact for the work, but also they're going home and they're having a great time at home. They're bringing that energy home with them. And that, for me, is why I would always lean into you're using it, but I also think it has to be in the right person's hands and used the right way.
Yeah.
Because it can be used negatively.
It could be, yeah. What I've also found pretty cool from the process is I'm very aware of not building a team, because there's me plus 7 others now on the Root to Growth team. And I very much didn't want to build a team that was all just cookie cutters of my personality. And when I say personality, I'm not talking about the core drivers of our energy that Don's assessment measures. I'm talking about like someone who, you know, I don't know how to say, like, just has like my, like, you know, because you get more people who are more, if you go introvert, extrovert, like more outgoing. And so like, I felt like up to this point, before I started using RT profiling, I was building this team of extroverts, like quite vocal, like out there people, because that's similar to my personality. And I was very aware that I needed to bring some people onto the team who were quite different to me. But I was never quite sure, because I don't think that way. I suppose I found it hard in the recruitment to be drawn to those people. But what the R3 assessors have helped me do is to identify, not that I wasn't drawn to those people, but to know when I was looking at a few of those candidates who maybe had a personality different to me, who would be the right fit. But by using the assessment profiling tool, I've now been able to bring quite different personalities to my team, like quite opposite to, so I have like Beryl, Mandy, and myself as like the first people on the team. And now the others who have joined, I would say, have quite different personalities. And it's great to have that mix on the team.
I think maybe what you said, you don't know how to put into words, is it's the faith that getting someone on board that's different to you is actually going to have a positive effect, but you didn't really know what that effect would be.
Yeah.
Whereas once you start to profile, then you can then go, oh, that's the way they're going to think. Okay, that is different to me, and actually that is needed because it's probably not something I enjoy as much. And it almost gives you that faith that, if you give someone that opportunity, they're going to rise to the occasion. Instead, it was guesswork. So you'd go with what you knew, and what you knew was you.
Yes,
so
exactly.
Then you start to irritate you.
And I think I've heard, not just from my own experience, that business owners or founders do tend to recruit a lot more of themselves, and then you just end up a whole lot of little repeated cookie cutter versions of yourself, because it is difficult to identify what you need in other people, whereas this tool is really great for that. But that
does lead us nicely into what we were actually going to talk about.
Okay.
That's all about getting the right people in the right seats, understanding how to push and pull, get yourself in the right place so that you're not stressing yourself out to a point where it's just too much and overwhelming and you don't know the answer. So we actually did record this very similar episode like in November last year-ish. And I unfortunately learned a very interesting story. And let me just...
Oh, is this where you did not keep record it? I'm glad you waited long enough that I forgot the topic of the episode before trying to do this, because we recorded a fantastic episode. Like, we bought the energy, we bought the dynamism. We were like fully loving the vibe, and we get to the end of the 40 minutes. We'd stayed up late to do it, and the recording had not taken place.
The
sound. So I was like, I think even that next episode, I said, we were very busy at that time, and I kind of was just like, I'm not like angry with you, but I'm not recording the next podcast episode. to do a solo one because I need a break.
I'm going to admit something. I'm going to lean into Ray's microphone here. I've done exactly the same thing. So I will have been faded that whole time. And so we're going to share the mic today because I've played the software, but I haven't changed it on where we actually record it. So this is going to be our mic.
Is the universe trying to tell us something about this topic?
Maybe it's just trying to bring us closer together because now we are unagi simunye.
Okay.
And that's okay. I think luckily that whole first 8 minutes was mostly you talking about your experience.
Okay, we'll see how the sound quality comes out.
And maybe we can do this in future. I quite like this. What do you guys think? Okay, so what were we actually going to talk about tonight? It
does tie in. I'm interested.
It does tie in.
To see how you tie it in.
I'm interested that you don't see how that ties in already. So I had someone that I'd been messaging because they'd seen me doing ice baths and for a long time. And they messaged me like, Don, tell me what to do. How do you ice bath? And so took them through the process, told them what to do. The usual thing of, I'm going to try it this way, I'm going to try it that way. I was like, no, that's not going to work because, and so there's a lot of trial and error. But their big reason was they were just tired all the time and they had no motivation and they weren't being the best version of themselves and they wanted to do something that would kick them into gear. Yep. And ice baths was one thing. So they were also getting, the testosterone test, a blood test, because what if it was a heart thing or if it was cancer? They were just worried that there was an underlying sickness that they needed to get on top of. And this was over a course of a couple of months where we were interacting just over WhatsApp and maybe the odd call. And then eventually, in like maybe 4 months, and he got back and I said, oh, how's it going? Like, noticing any difference? And he said, to be honest, I've done ice baths every single day. I go to CrossFit 3 times a week at like 5:30 in the morning, which is, by the way, it's still very impressive to actually do that. And he said, I don't notice a difference. I just don't feel very good. And I don't know what to do. So I said, right, jump on a call with me. So we jumped on a call and we start to have a conversation. And I've done his I3, so the profiling.
Yes.
So I know where he's kind of coming from. I know his thinking. I know a bit about...
what feeds his energy and what takes away from it.
And I know the awarenesses of what may happen. So he's a business owner. He's got a family. And I kind of know what may happen to certain people that have traits like he does. So I kind of start to ask some questions. And in the back of my mind, I go, well, his traits, that's the one that says they are more likely to get burnt out and there was a combination that he had that would like make that even harder for him to recognize because there was like this boldness about him that he wouldn't admit to being burnt out. So he just wouldn't see it as a thing. So I asked a question. I said, okay, well, we're about September, October now. Have you gone through anything stressful recently? Like, has it been a load on you? And he goes, do you know what? No, not really. Like, life's pretty good at the moment, quite settled. And I was like, oh, damn, way wrong now. Like, Don's way off. There we go.
Way off the mark.
Way off the mark. I was just guessing. And what do I know? I don't want to talk about it. So we carry on talking. So after a couple more questions, and I was just like, oh, okay, well, name some things that you have done. I got a bit of history about the previous business that he had and the new business, all that kind of stuff. And then he said to me, this was maybe 3 minutes later after I'd asked that original question, any big stresses happening? He was like, no. 3 minutes later, turns out he goes, yeah, about 4 months ago, like 4 to 5 months ago, it was a really stressful time at work. Like there was just so much going on. I couldn't keep things together, but I just buckled down and I got through it. And he said, yeah, and on top of that, we've just moved house and everything's starting to settle. And I looked at it and I was like, are you serious? It's like, I asked you 3 minutes ago if you've gone through anything stressful and you said no. And 3 minutes later, you've just told me that not only was work super hectic and you were just keeping your head above the water, but you've also moved house in that time.
Yeah.
And I was like, just one of those on their own is enough to send certain people over the edge because of stress. And you've done both of those. And I said, the funny thing is, you won't have felt the burnout 3 months ago or 4 months ago. What you would feel now is the effects of what you went through then, that your body was able to rise to the occasion, be resilient of, and now you're just suffering after.
And you didn't give your body time to come down from that probably and just just reset.
And that's where it's like leaning on my experience of, say, high performance in psychology is like, it's knowing that what you're going through now is only going to be in effect later. And that can be the positive and the negative. So your thoughts now will create your reality in the future, whether that's negative thoughts or positive thoughts. And that's talk about the law of attraction and all those completely different left of field things. But it was happening to him where I was like, just have a bit of faith. You've got your tests back. Those are all clear. So you know it's not, because we did want to check, like, I'm not going to say this and then it ends up being some like underlying condition that I was just like knocked off. But it all came back clear. So I was like, look, it's possibly that. So just give yourself a bit of time, a bit of faith, a bit of understanding, be kind to yourself, and just know that what you're doing now, all these actions you're taking to ice bath and slow down and just be a bit more mindful and exercise, they will come into play. And sure enough, the more I messaged, like it was like a month later, and even now into January, I'm like, how are you feeling? He's like, yeah, I'm back on top of things. Like it's all going well.
Good.
And it was just for me, it was a really good example of, one, you say, how do I tie it in? Knowing his profile allowed me to connect with him and guide him through something that, because I know what he would have got himself into.
And the typical things that profile, the struggles.
And how to connect with him so that he would listen, because actually the ones he had wouldn't listen until I got them to think that they were. And then it's about stress. And like what you're currently going through is making time for yourself. And we don't often do this, but it's making time for yourself in the short little bits so that you don't have to make your time for yourself later in a long way. So it's like that region beta paradox stuff, is like the small things add up. So if you're going through something that's requiring a lot of your time, stress, thinking, you have to be disciplined enough to put things in the now, whether it's 10 minutes or 12 minutes.
And know that by doing that, you're not going to see the benefit of those in the now. It's going to come in time. And it's kind of like on the flip side, when someone has a big, I want to say like officially burnt out, like they just have a complete meltdown and they become like, you hear people, the one person we interviewed and the burnout coach. Zane, like how he went to, like he almost became numb for a period of days. But it's often at that point where he just completely, his body shut down completely. But it's often the trigger to that complete burnout moment where your body shuts down, if you've ever gone to that extreme, is often like a small event. And because it's not the now that's causing your body to react the way it is, it's months of accumulation. And that could be months of positive accumulation or months of negative accumulation. And so it's just being aware of that and giving yourself the time.
Yeah, I agree. And so just to reinforce that point is, I think last week I said it, either it was on LinkedIn or in the podcast episodes, that all those little things that you started out in 2025 doing, but they're not directly impacting you. They're not directly having a result. If you stop those, in 3 months' time, the negative effect of those is going to come up. But if you keep going, you're not going to get the negative effect, but you won't necessarily attribute it to those small things.
Yes.
So there's a book called Peak Mind. I can't remember the author.
It talks about it. Okay.
And she goes and does mindfulness for execs, and her, like, through the neuroscience and recommendations, is 12 minutes a day. And if you say, I don't have 12 minutes, then you have to double it, because that's how important that time is for your mind to be able to clear its working memory so that you can actually think clearly.
And are you're just talking meditation or just something?
No.
You could be journaling, meditation, going for a walk where you're not listening to anything, but just time to just to focus and think. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, we were watching Dr. Binox with the kids, and they talked about working memory. And that's a big thing of what she focuses on, is when you're so busy, it's like, think about those beta waves in your brain waves.
Yes.
That thinking time, you need to be able to calm those down to be able to get into a different state, to put into play all the things that give you clarity. And if you're not making time for that now, then, the universe will throw pebbles, then rocks, then stones. Then later on, you'll be forced to, but it's not because of anything other than you have no other choice.
And it's just, like, I suppose the big message of today is just be really, know that often where you're at now might be due to, you might have been building up to that point for months, maybe even a couple of years. And therefore, unwinding where you might have got to, you need to be patient with yourself. And I was saying, before we hit record, when we were discussing this topic for tonight, that for myself, where it was about like 2 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago, because I think we've been in this house now for 3.5 years. So about 2.5 years ago, maybe 3, around that
I
time.
can check my timeline.
Yeah, I can check the timeline. Don's going to do like a lifetime timeline. But I was like probably at my worst with anxiety. And I'd never experienced, I'm 36 years old now, so I would have been about 33 at the time. I'd never experienced any form of anxiety up to that point in time. And it was just from being a business owner and having 3 kids going on 4, and just expecting so much of myself. And when I started working on getting rid of that anxiety, because I had like constant just like heart palpitations and just like my mind was racing all the time. I did like, used like an anxiety coach and did a bit of like, read her book and did a bit of her program and stuff that helped me with that. And one of the key things that she really drilled home and that I then experienced is that you can't be like, right, I'm working so hard on myself. It's now been a couple of weeks. Why am I still sitting? Why has nothing happened? You have to realize that it's taken you months to build to a point, whether that's anxiety or burnout or whatever you've got to, and to just expect that it will take months to unwind it because that's what you've done to your body. And I suppose another analogy is if you've spent 2 years eating rubbish and not exercising and letting your muscles waste away and you have a flabby body, don't expect a couple of weeks of gym to put you on the straight and narrow. So like if you're working on your mental space, then that same principle applies. Like whatever you would do in the gym is the same on what you need to think about working.
It's just not as apparent, isn't it, when it's on your mind?
Yeah.
So the mental stuff isn't as apparent as the physical stuff. It's harder to measure. And I often actually say in my talks that I do, because I do some talks, is when it goes onto any journey of personal growth, you have to remind yourself to give yourself time, because you've spent, let's say you're 35, you spent 35 years reinforcing whatever behavior patterns it is that you've got to get to that point. And now you're on this personal growth pattern and you think that within the first 3 or 6 months, you're going to change all of those.
And those grooves run deep. Like that book we're listening to at the moment, I just finished it, Don's moved on to it, is like, love yourself like your life depends on it, because it does. And he talks about carving new grooves in your thought patterns. And the moment that things go wrong, like his girlfriend broke up with him, was saying, you default to your old grooves and you need to go back to keep practicing those new grooves of new thought processes, the new ways that you want to carve out your life. You have to keep working at it because you've spent 30 years carving out other grooves that need to be repatterned.
Yeah. And I think, another analogy for that is like it's a field of grass. And if you walk over it, you can create a pathway. And in order for that pathway to grow the grass again, it needs to not be trodden on. So you need to walk on another path.
Interesting. I like that visual.
Yeah. I think that was there was a neuroscientist that came up with that visual. I'll not take credit for that. But I like it because it does show that like the repeated patterns and practice of what you need to do to make something happen it's the same thing over and over and over and over again.
Now, every time I meditate or do my mantra, I'm going to picture myself. Not that I'm generally thinking pictures, but I'm going to picture.
Are you starting to think in pictures?
I don't know. But I'm going to imagine myself walking along grass and thinking, how many times do I need to walk along this route for like a nice mud path to form?
I feel like I'm going to get sidetracked here, but
I always sidetrack when I talk about the way my brain works.
So I know possibly why you might struggle to think of a picture and rather in your lists and details.
Yes.
Is it's not descriptive enough. So if there's a word, like if I'm like, think of a house, you can't think of a house, right? You think of the word house, but you don't see the word house. It's just, I don't even know how it works. But if I said to you, think of a pink house with a brown door at the front, 3 windows, one in the middle above the door, 2 either side of it. They've got wooden crosses in between with curtains behind it. And it's got a brown roof with a blue sky behind it and white clouds. Can you picture that?
I can, but then you say it's not descriptive enough. But when we do like that shopping list game that we play with the kids, where you go to the shop and buy this, and you draw up a picture, which is pretty detailed, my brain just doesn't draw a picture. It's a list.
But it's because that list isn't a specific thing that what it looks like. It's just the object. So a chocolate bar will just be a list. But if I said to you, I want you to think of a brown wrapping chocolate bar that's got squashed edges that says lion on the front in yellow letters, and then it's got the little barcode on the side. Could you picture then a lion bar with a little barcode?
I don't know what a lion bar looks like.
Yeah, so there we go. So then you would picture that lion bar. Do you know what I mean? So because you can picture things, but they have to be descriptive for you to picture.
Maybe. I don't know.
Anyway.
Going down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, sorry. I did say I was going to. Anyway, so I mean, the whole point of today's episode was to just talk around a bit of stress, that case study, so that if you guys are in that moment or off the back of last year, you are in that moment of resulting hard work to get yourself somewhere.
Plans for 2025 and it feels like the cobwebs of 2024 are clinging on.
Yeah, or you don't recognize that they're there. So like you're currently walking through mud and you don't know why.
And you had these right things and nothing.
You had these best intentions of getting going and you just didn't. Then first of all, it's like raising awareness, right? Be aware that those are there and accept that they're there, but don't stop what you're trying to do, because it will start to get easier the more actions you take.
100%.
Yeah, and then for my new lease, I've got a 100 press-ups challenge going with Jared. And instead of doing 100 press-ups, I do 99 every day.
What was your logic on that again?
The power of 11. So 99 is a multiple of 11.
Yes.
And falling one short of 100 might just be that thing that keeps me going every day, so that it tricks my mind into going, I want to play with my chimp, right? I want to, it's not going to achieve that, and it's an achiever chimp. So let's just keep going until you can. And I want to try and do that for a year.
Okay, cool.
So that's my logic. I'm saying it out loud now, 21/01/2025. Let's see where that goes.
Nah.
So accountability buddies, if you guys haven't got one, get one, because actually out of nothing will come something. And it was Jared came around and he was like, this is what I'm going to do. And I was like, oh, let's do a challenge. And he was like, okay, cool. And then now we're going back and forth and we message each other every day. So
my big focus, at least for like the first quarter of 25, it might go beyond, is just really nailing that 8 hours of sleep, which...
Well, you can go do now. I'll give you a sleep in. Right.
Well,
were you going to say anything?
No.
Welcome.
I was going to say, thanks for the offer of the sleep in. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Oh, you're saying thank you to them.
I'm not sure what I was saying thank you for. I was just saying thank you
to the world. Just be grateful. Okay, so remember, Ubuntu, we are who we are through others. So I'll work on me for you if you work on you for me. And have a great day. Thanks for listening, and we appreciate you. Share, like, comment, spread the word. We're getting some really good feedback from it. And it's really good to hear that, because you never know how much we need that sometimes. All right. So thanks, guys and girls and everyone in between. Bye.